Thank you for joining me for the first video in my reed making series. Today, I'll show you how I go from tube cane to gouged cane. Since these segments are intended to be an overview of the major steps that I take to make a reed, I won't be focusing as heavily on either cane selection or how I specifically decide to cut cane to length using the guillotine. Ryan Crapo, principal bassoonist of the Houston Symphony, beautifully covers the more meticulous aspects of sorting cane for quality. So, without further ado, it's time to choose our tube of cane to split. Here are the materials we'll need for splitting tubes: an X-Acto knife, a small hammer, a pencil, and our tube of cane. I purchased the X-Acto knife and hammer at Canadian Tire and ordered half a kilogram of tube cane from Miller Marketing in the United States. First, we'll take our tube and look at it from both ends. This end is more evenly round, so this is the side I'll mark where to split the tube with a pencil. I'm going to orient the tube first so that we see the less tightly curved side and then the more tightly curved side. Now I'll mark where the curve changes. Here's why we do this. When a reed has an unbalanced tip opening, assuming that it hasn't been unevenly scraped, it may mean that the tube was split in such a way that you combine two differing cane densities instead of a single density. By rotating the tube and comparing the curvature of the pairs of opposite sides of the tube, you can determine where to make the split to achieve a symmetrical aperture in the reed. Now that I've determined where to split, I'll take the tube of cane and make sure that it is perpendicular to a hard surface. I'll take the X-Acto knife and line it up with the pencil marks. Next, I'll take the hammer and gently tap on the X-Acto knife so that it cuts through the cane. You don't need to split it all the way down, about halfway is fine. At this angle, it looks like I might hit my thumb, but it is at a safe distance from the hammer. For the final cut, I'll tap the hammer until the knife successfully splits through the cane. At this point, I can pry apart the tube with my hands. Here's the equipment we need for gouging. Over on the left, we have the guillotine. This is made by a European company called Rimple and available to order through Miller Marketing. Right next to it is the pre-gouger. In the middle is a two-part arc fillier. And finally, on the right, we have the gouger. This three-part gouging machinery was made by Greg James, machinist of Precision Music Products Ltd, located in Toronto. We are ultimately looking for the straightest pieces of cane to use. Often, we can end up with cane that has two types of tendencies: smiling cane and frowning cane. Here is a picture of smiling cane. Only the middle of the cane is touching the table while the ends curve upward. In this case, a fair amount of the middle appears to be straight enough that I can chop off the ends and have something that I can use. Here is a picture of frowning cane. Only the ends of the piece are making contact with the table while the rest of the cane bows upward in the middle. I'll look at the piece of cane at various angles, along with resting it against a hard surface to determine where the straightest side is, as shown in the previous pictures. Then I'll choose the areas that I want to chop off. I measure my cane to 120 millimeters, so this means that I only have so much to work with. In this case, it's going to be about here, so I'll mark this with a pencil. I put this in the guillotine, hold it with my thumb, and press down. I take the cane that I want and soak it for 2 days so it is ready for the pre-gouger. I would recommend changing the water after 24 hours. The pre-gouger removes most of the softer part of the cane to prepare it for the gouger, which does more refined work. I pull the lever towards me and take a piece of soaked cane to place in the bed of the pre-gouger. Since I have to hold the pre-gouger in place when I push down the lever, I use a rag or soft cloth to make it more comfortable. I make sure to have a bin underneath the table for the discarded part of the cane. If it's difficult to remove the cane from the machine, I can use another pre-gouged piece to push it through. Here is what the piece of cane looks like after it has been through the pre-gouger. It is now ready for the arc fillier. The purpose of the arc fillier is to flatten the edges of the cane so that it can sit evenly in the bed of the gouger. I'll take a soaked piece of cane out of the water and place it in the bed of the arc fillier. Then I'll use the plastic tool to push the cane through the blade at the other end of the machine. You can see that 2 narrow pieces have been removed from the pre-gouged piece of cane. Here's what it looks like now. For comparison, here is a side view of what the pre-gouged cane looked like before and after it's been through the arc fillier. In this stage, it is now ready for the gouger. Right now I'm lifting up the handle that operates the blade of the gouger and removing the tissue that protects the blade. I'll take a soaked piece of cane and pull this lever of the gouger towards me so that it lifts up the clamp to insert the cane. Pulling the lever in the opposite direction clamps down the cane so that it won't move. Taking the handle that operates the blade, I use slow strokes to push away from me, lifting up the blade to move it back to the starting point. Make sure that you have a trash bin handy for the shavings. You don't have to pull out each shaving every time like I did here. For any bassoonists watching, I use a micrometer to measure my cane at 55 thousandths of an inch, or 139 hundredths of a millimeter. When I hear the sound of metal on metal, I know that the gouger has taken off as much cane as it needs to. Now that the cane has been gouged, it's time to let it dry for 3 days. During this period, some pieces may curl too much to be put into the shaper, which means they need to be discarded. In the case of these pieces of cane here, we can see that the one in the middle has curled severely. There are other tests for determining which pieces to use, but visually it is clear that the middle piece isn't something I can work with. Tune in next time to learn about shaping and profiling.